All right, it's time to talk about rhythm, which is the fifth principle of the KYBALION that kind of builds upon the rest of the other principles that we have been discussing. And I think at this point there is some sort of confusion that can arise when talking about the other principles because they start kind of overlapping, and that's because we're talking about a law that is the law of movement, the law of vibration, basically. That's why I love so much vibration, because it does describe what this reality is, and it also talks about unity at the same time, because you cannot talk about the creation without talking about unity. And so rhythm and the others are just going to build upon those, which again, vibration and polarity to me are key components of understanding everything in the physical, mental, and spiritual plane, all in the creation actually. So rhythm is going to be easy to understand. Remember here, it's important to just keep in mind polarity, because there are always two poles to everything. Duality is present in the whole creation. And vibration is important, because that's what's causing the rhythm. That's what's causing the movement in between. And again, at this point, it should be really easy to understand rhythm. So this is going to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. This again I took out of the book, the KYBALION, which cites the KYBALION. It sounds weird, but it's the KYBALION talking about the KYBALION. And then there's another quote that I got from the KYBALION, the book, and that's not a reference to the KYBALION, that's the last one. So it starts with, everything flows out and in. There's more information there, and I just cut it short because I think these two phrases summarize the whole opening of the chapter in the KYBALION about rhythm. Everything flows out and in. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates, and that is, rhythm is it's that force that's present between the swing of the pendulum. Okay, so the pendulum swings between two polarities, and that creates the rhythm that eventually causes vibration, which is a constant of this. And it's just cycles. Cycles is the best word to describe this phenomena, because it shows how things just go back to its beginning. Cycles always return to the beginning, and we can see this in the physical plane, the mental plane, and of course the spiritual plane. That's why I have that. The first note that I have beyond this is the creation. It flows from material to spiritual. And I love that the KYBALION actually mentions this, because they say that the whole breath of Brahm, which is in Hindu mythology, is the Godhead, is the creation itself. And then there is the out breath and the in breath. So I would say when it's exhaling, it's creating the whole universe. When it's inhaling, it's returning back to source. And that's in the Law of One Ra calls it the heartbeat. The Confederation actually calls it a heartbeat. And anything, just any analogy like we saw in the correspondence principle actually helps to visualize this. Life and death, like I have here. Anything, day and night. These are all analogies for the representation of the creation and the destruction. Creation and destruction. It's just how it is, sleeping and waking. So the rhythm is what happens in between. I think that's the key part that I want to emphasize. The rhythm is what happens in between. What is like, say, for example, when we talk about life and death, life should be, birth and death. Actually would be better than life and death, because life is what happens between birth and death, at least in the context of human experience. That's what I'm talking about. Life is that experience that happens between birth and death. But obviously the two are like tying in together a circle, and it's a cycle. So that's why we know that reincarnation is not a fact, is just obvious. It's an apparent thing, to anybody who can study this and understand without empirical evidence, which there even exists empirical evidence, or at least research that shows a lot of coincidences that simply happen between different generations and how they carry on the same information. It's a whole topic, but I don't want to get into that. The point is that rhythm is what happens in between. So it's important to know this law. In the KYBALION, I am not very much into Western occultism, so I know they use it for understanding life in some ways. I gotta be honest, I'm gonna give my interpretation based on Oriental philosophy, Buddhism in general, and that's why you see I'm going to overlap. For anybody that feels kind of discouraged by this, I just want to tell you that, and this is important too, discouraged because I guess some people think, and this is some old paradigms that we have, that we need to follow a specific dogma to fully understand it. In my belief, at least, the more you can explore other teachings and you see the similarities between them, and this is why I'm such a fan of the Law of One, because it does just that. It does that. It explores everything. Or it doesn't explore everything. It just lends credence to everything and discredit other things that we know naturally by heart that are not true. Like giving, commandments, or giving some rules of living. Then it discredits that, because we all know that that's not a way of living. So my point is that the KYBALION is the source of everything. The KYBALION is like the teachings that were given back in Egypt thousands of years ago. And you are right to understand that Hinduism actually came out of these teachings. Even though we cannot trace it with books and people, because people didn't care about writing this stuff. This was always passed down as knowledge. We became obsessed with writing after, I would say, even past Greek philosophers. I mean, we got really into writing and record keeping, which we know it's also a little bit false to rely on written documents. In Taoism, they even say nothing should be written. In Zen Buddhism, they tell you nothing. There's no book for Zen. So the point that I want to make is that since the KYBALION was given thousands of years ago, the question is, who followed it? In which cultures do we see it present? Its teachings explored and refined and polished and used. Well, there's only a few sources that we can see that while they didn't maintain exactly as the KYBALION, because that's the point. The point is not to take something and just create a sort of sacred text. This is why this is not sacred at all. This is just emphasizing the obvious laws that exist and we can all experience, is that only a certain views actually explore this and created their own views, and that would be, in my view, Hinduism and Taoism. Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism, and Zen Buddhism is just the final refinement, accommodated for modern life in a sense, even though this was done obviously 1300 years ago or so, or the patriarchs of Zen Buddhism. But the point is that it kind of adapted to the new society and how we were living, how it became practical from mythological Hinduism all the way to Zen Buddhism, which is for everybody basically. You don't have to be in a monastery. You don't have to dedicate life cycles to to reincarnate and become a Buddha. It just becomes sudden awakening, and that's the point. So everything came out from that, and this is why I'm saying I love to give the practical elements to this. So this is why I'm going into this rant about why we should consider every point of view. Even the Law of One, I'm putting it here because the Law of One is the source of the KYBALION, if you think about it, and is the most recent sophisticated lessons or teachings that we have from higher source. So why not, right? Okay, so going back to the notes that I have here, it's important to know that it's the flow that is the rhythm. The rhythm represents the flow between the material and the spiritual world. And I love that in the creation, because the universe was created as a material. It materialized itself, and it became, I mean, we can talk about the octaves. If you're familiar with the law of one and you understand this model, the octave was created out of basically nothing, just thought. And this thought arose as energy, and that energy over our continuum of time, it kind of solidified into matter, and then matter became sentient, and sentient became aware of itself. And then the process, you can see as above so below here too, how energy is supposed to become aware of itself, which is us. It's all implicit in the creation. And eventually it'll start evolving into more spiritual perception of itself, transpersonal views of the self, which is where we are right now. We are transcending the personal identity, the ego self, and all this stuff. So it makes natural sense that if it flows from the material to the spiritual, we are going through the process of becoming more spiritual, which again is a definition that I don't want to put here, but whatever that means to you, it's becoming spiritual, and we are growing to that. Eventually, we'll all go back to oneness, which is the source of creation, and it'll repeat itself. That's just how it is. The octaves will be created infinitely, and that's just how it flows. Now, in terms of our present experience, we can see it as life and death. That's the biggest rhythm we can explore, our experience of life, okay? And you can see that the rhythm is that the same way you were born, you're going to die, you know, and there's a rhythm between which we call experience, and that's the purpose of life, just having that experience. In day and night, we can see it too. I mean, we can see it in the cycles of the seasons. We can see it in the tides. We can see it in the moon cycles and everything else that you can see. The year, the planets, everything just keeps going into cycles, and that rhythm is what maintains them there. So in the physical plane, we can see it. There are so many examples. I mean, you can get creative and see cycles everywhere. It's just, an atom has cycles, dogs have cycles, women have cycles, you know, of menstrual cycles. I mean, men have cycles, of course, too, with testosterone. It's just that it's a very slow or a steep incline and then a slow decline, but that's a cycle, you know. So you can see it in the physical world. I think that's obvious. Now, when it gets tricky is with the mind, because the mind, you can see, well, it's very subjective. You know, with the mind, how do we perceive cycles, or the rhythm that it's causing the cycles? And so it depends again on polarity. Polarity is the two poles that are going to manifest, whatever it may be. You know, if you have any inclination to be a certain way, that's going to create a sort of momentum for you to be that way. And you're going to be swinging back and forth between the way that you are, whatever identity you might have, and the opposite. And if you feel very into your gender, then you're going to have swings back to the other gender. That's just how it happens. And how you deal with that is what causes the resistance and suffering. So how you relate to the world, and how you feel that you are, this is all polarizing. This is why I talk about polarity so much in the law of one, because it's really what creates our experience. How much polarized you are in one way or another. What the KYBALION is telling us with the rhythm is that you should know that if you're polarized into one way, I mean, you should expect the swing to the other way, which shouldn't surprise you. You should be aware of that. becoming aware of that is what they call becoming sort of master on this life pattern that occurs. Because if you're aware of that, then you won't be taken by surprise. Plus, you will be prepared for the swing, and you will ride it. You will ride it joyfully. So, I think that's the important lesson that at least comes out to the initiate, that gets the idea and says, okay, I'm riding a wave of rhythms because of my mental view on polarization, depending on whatever it is. How you feel, it's important too. How you behave, how you judge the world, how you anything really is just about the way you perceive reality. And once you become aware that the way you're perceiving reality is a polarized way, and that by its nature it's going to create the opposite, you'll be swung back to the opposite somehow, mentally. I'm talking about mentally. This can manifest obviously in reality, and this is where the law of attraction comes into, and there's a lot of that. And I don't think the law of attraction has enough depth in the New Age lessons and teachings of the law of attraction for people to fully understand it. And I think this is where some people may feel incomplete, and they feel like because they didn't understand this rhythm, and the same way you attract something, you're going to reject something else. So it's as real as it is, but it's more complicated or deep than is portrayed out there. And I think there's a lot of that because people feel incomplete, so they want to attract those things that they are opposed to already. So it's a whole mind game. So in any case, the point is that as we explore this, then now we can be aware that we're creating the opposite, and we're going to swing back to that. We're going to retract to that. And this is, to me, it's the most important thing. Now, one of the things that come out, and I love that this is said, these two parts, I'm going to finish with these two parts. This is what's creating your inertia of life. This is what's creating your through perception, because the body is simply a creature of the mind. So the physical plane is a creature of the mind, because the body is not just your physical, organic, human organism. Your body extends to everything that you're perceiving right now. The room, the sun if it's out, the neighbors, other people. Your body is everything. And your mind is creating all of it. Perception of the near body and of the extended body, which would be the rest of the environment that you're surrounded with. So as you explore this, you're going to feel that your mind naturally wants to find a sort of balance. And this is what the law of neutralization, which they talk about in the KYBALION, that's what it sort of elicits in me when I read the law of neutralization, rising above the ego, as they say. Because you're no longer associated with the body, and you're not expecting anything from the immediate extended body or your body, but you're transcending the ego and getting into a more balanced point. If we use the energy centers, we're going from transcending the ego, which is the lower energy centers, to the center balance, which is the heart. And from there, at least from there, you can see the pivot of the whole creation, which is unconditional love. Everything's it's being tied in together. I wanted to say something about the magnet, but it completely escaped me. So if I remember, I'll explain it here. But continue with the law of neutralization and rising above the ego. I love that because that to me sort of invites to the thinking in Buddhism when we talk about the middle way, Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana means that, the middle way. It's the middle way. The middle way is to perceive things. It's just to be right in the center. because as long as you're polarized one way, then you will be pulled to the other side, and you will feel that pull and push. So centering yourself, and this is why an understanding of polarity, knowing that both are secretly one, you can be in the middle. You can appreciate the whole as just one unity and not opposed forces. In fact, there is only one force binding them together, and I have said, like I have said before, it's love. Love is the binding force of everything. Love is what's in there, and I think that's what I wanted to show with the magnet. So if we have the magnet, I can get rid of this already, at least this part. So if we have the magnet, and there is a force here, we, depending on how much we're polarized in one end or the other, we're going to feel the pull of the other side, because that's just what the magnet is doing. It's creating this field of energy that it's being recirculated, and that's rhythm. Rhythm is this, polarity is here, and the cycles are vibrations that will continue to occur. In our minds, once we're polarized this way or this way, it doesn't matter. We're always trying to be on the positive, because that's just our way of thinking, and we always think that we're positive, and so the negative is just a contrast for us. But the point is that when we get into the middle, we get into the binding force of the two poles, which is right, I would say right here in between the two, right? So that is the middle way. The middle way is appreciating the unity between two, because out here it seems like there is a conflict in between the two. There is a struggle of one trying to dominate the other. But really what's happening is that they both are creating movement. They both are creating energy. They both are creating life. And so you will be aware that you're going to be going up and down, or left and right, positive and negative, it doesn't matter, in your mind, as long as you continue to be polarized in one way. So in the middle way, you appreciate things. And that's what to me means the law of neutralization. Now to do this, this is something that you can read in the KYBALION towards the end of the chapter, I think it is, where they say the will is superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle. Now you cannot escape the principle, just like you cannot escape polarity in this reality. But you can use your will, which is superior. And I love that phrase, because free will is the first distortion that cannot be messed with. I mean, some people mess with it, but all they're doing is creating more inertia for them, which is called karma. It's the same thing, action, you're doing. And by you creating this, you're just moving back and forth again. I mean, you're polarizing yourself, see? So will is important. It's the most important thing. And I love that they say it's superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle. The conscious manifestation is what's happening already, because you carry already a sort of polarized perception of life. That's fine. You will experience, because of everything. It's like I woke you up right now, and you are realizing that you are in movement, you are in transit with all your emotions and your ways of seeing the world and everything else. And this is where it becomes really practical. Now you can become a slave or a chess piece in the game of the movement that is happening, right? That's when in the law of one they call the logos, the sun is moving for you. It's just throwing catalysts at you so you can grasp the idea that you are the one in control now. You're the one who has the will. Otherwise, you will be pushed around. And that's fine, because that's the lesson, that's the teaching that every human needs to go through. But once you realize that you have the will to change everything, then now you're in control. You are in the driving seat, and you will experience, the conscious manifestations of the principle, meaning you will experience everything that you have. And this is why awakening is such a thing, because people are going to receive all sort of karma, and all the collectors are going to come to your door knocking, asking for I'm not talking about physical, but just like life in general is going to want you to pay your debts. So The difference now is that instead of you becoming a victim of this momentum, you are now conscious of what's happening and you appreciate it. You don't polarize more. So any event that may usually arouse you to feel anger or to feel depressed, sad, fearful, you will know where it's coming from and you will sit in the middle and you won't expect the opposite. You won't maintain yourself there. You just know what it is and you sit in the middle. So before I finish, I just want to add something else, because that illustrates to me the most important part of just learning the ways of rhythm and knowing that it exists. That is just not knowing that it exists, recognizing that it exists. And if you paid attention closely to what I said, you will realize that what I said about recognizing the patterns in your life as rhythms and knowing that there is polarity in your thinking, there is one key word that is really what makes everything settle down and puts you in the driver's seat of the middle way, really. And that word is forgiveness. Forgiveness is a word that is so misunderstood. Forgiveness actually is, and this is the synonym that I would use, acceptance. When you accept everything in your life, and truly accept it, it's not accepting it by just because you know, intellectually accepting it. Okay, I accept everything that happens in my life. Acceptance is truly knowing, understanding, and accepting. You have no other choice. Acceptance is actually not creating friction. Let's put it that way. Not creating resistance. So there is no friction. Acceptance is just allowing things to be, surrendering, letting go of anything that you may have. And at that point, you're free. You are completely free. So forgiveness is really of the self. You forgive yourself. Accept yourself. Let's put it that way, because I think religions have created this idea of forgiveness means that you were guilty of something or victim of something, and then you have to go and you rise above them. No, you're rising above who you were before accepting yourself. That's the real rising above something, if anything. So acceptance will put you in the driver's seat by saying, I am open to any possibilities. I accept everything that happens in my life, and I understand that there are emotions. And I am not guilty, nor am I a victim. I'm just here experiencing it. I signed up to this trip in life because there are movements in the universe that I decided to explore and live. But creating resistance is only gonna create more friction. Friction is just gonna hurt. And that's why suffering ends up being part of our existence, our beingness in general. So, as I said before, I think we are on time for our friend, the wave, and this will be, again, pretty easy. I think it gets easier on every principle. Rhythm we can say it's the measure between these two movements, which are here and here. So the measure of the swing to one side is the measure of the swing to the other, and this will create the rhythm. Now remember when I said at the beginning that to visualize this, polarity is, it's up here, and then we have vibration, which is the whole, quadrant of movements and cycles and so on, correspondences above, etc. The point that I want you to remember is this line. This line is consciousness itself. It's awareness. It's pure awareness. It's what's creating. It's actually what's vibrating. And so if you look at this as consciousness and you see yourself as pure awareness, then you're escaping rhythms, you're escaping polarity, and you're actually sitting in the middle way. And so with this, I think it's enough. You can see, once again, it's so easy to understand the KYBALION and every force in nature by understanding the wave, because everything vibrates, and for it to vibrate, it needs to have polar opposites, and then it creates rhythms, and as above, so below, so forth. Everything can be explained with that. I hope that made sense. And if anything, as usual, leave me a question in the comments. Next, I think we have causation, or cause and effect, which again just makes it really easy. And then we have a couple of more videos. I'm just going to make gender and mental gender, axioms, and something else I'll make up. Because I really like the KYBALION. I think it's an easy way to get a grip on reality and how things work, especially in your mind. So that's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video.